How you doing? I'm Indie Sage. So today I'm going to do a talk on the anthropological view of a new hypothesis of the missing link, in correspondence with our current day state of affairs and conditions of humanity, as a result of the fall of the golden age and the sacred matriarchy into the corrupt patriarchy and the fall from grace over the last 6,000 years. So, turns out that mankind is a little different than most mammals in the sense that we have a matriarchal breeding society. Now, most other mammals, the males do what they want and get what they want and dictate the pecking order. Now, with humans, however, it's quite different. The males don't get to do anything they want to do unless the female allows it. Now, if they do, it's considered a transgression, to be punishable, sometimes by death. Now, because of this, mankind has been privileged to learn love. Now, in most creatures that don't do pair bonding, in which most males have a harem of females, the dominant male has exclusive breeding rights, and the other males are usually exiled when they reach puberty, find their own harem. And so, in this process, there is contingency in which the male can either stay in the darkness from which he was created, or he can learn the light of love. Now, the light of love is well summed up by the concept of maternal instincts. Maternal instincts are intrinsic and inherent in women. There's always exceptions to this, but in most women, compassion, empathy, sympathy, understanding, consideration, kindness are something that they're born with and that they understand and see innately. Now, men, however, do not have these innate instincts necessarily, and there will be exceptions to this, but many of us, and one might say the vast majority, have to learn the light of love. And so, in this process of learning, we integrate the feminine aspect of selflessness and the male aspect of selfishness. And so these can also be summed up as subtlety and indirectness in the feminine aspect, or directness and aggression or assertiveness in the male aspect. Now, as a result of these inherent aspects and our reflection upon them and awareness that they exist, the establishment, which has cared for humanity and babysat us for the last 6,000 years and let things crumble down to the state of affairs in which they are today, out of good intentions, to spread the fear to the rest of the world and all the different cultures. That fear may be triggered somewhat by our pale skin and inability to gain pigment and sufficient vitamin D balance, which is a mandatory prerequisite for having and building serotonin, which is the agreeable hormone. And so since the white devil, one might call him, has come to become very disagreeable and more focused on the masculine aspect, lacking compassion, in a revolt against the sacred feminine, when we overtook the sacred feminines, beginning with the secret cult of Amun, and the beginning of written language, gold as our currency, and the invention of prostitution to disempower the female. Now, since we have come from a time where we were in another habitat, from which we've had a lost ancestral trauma, and we still are to this day trying to figure out just where our ancestors came from. Those ancestors that disappeared from the fossil record from 4.4 million years ago up until 0.2 million years ago, or 200,000 years ago roughly. Now, during that time, very dramatic changes happened to our physiology. And one of the most notable and obvious indications of a change of habit and behavior, habitation, and change of environment is the fact that during that time in which we disappeared from the fossil record, when we had showed back up, we lost our coat of fur. Our skull features had become the opposite of any primate skull features, and we grew a large cranium, had a higher brain to body ratio, lost our instincts to thrive terrestrially, and seemingly gained instincts to thrive in an aquatic environment. Now, all terrestrial mammals, when they're born, are able to either climb or crawl or run immediately after birth. Humans, however, are an exception to this. As many may know, the infant after birth is able to swim and is born fat so that it will float. This is very uncommon amongst terrestrial mammals, but this is something that we have in common with all aquatic mammals. Now, if a human baby is born prematurely, he or she will be born with something called vernix, a cheesy substance that allows the baby to float if they're not fat enough and do not have a sufficient body fat or adipose tissue to be able to float. Now, based on this understanding, we can speculate that mankind may have lived in an aquatic environment. Based on our diet and our skin, it would appear that we lived in the sea, in a saltwater environment. Any terrestrial food that's not having the same characteristics of seafood is toxic to our liver. The human body is not capable of eating meat without fire and a cutting tool, which we supposedly have not had until about 50,000 years ago when we invented fire. Or discovered fire, I should say. Why are we Why are we so interested in this speculatory theory of our missing link? Well, humankind has been lost and forgotten our origins for over 200,000 years. As a result, many people have clung to escapism and death worship. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with death worship, various world religions, including Western world religions and Buddhism, are now being considered death worship in the sense that life is considered to be a place of suffering and struggle, whereas death is considered to be a place in which we get to return home to the place where we are rightfully from, a place where we thrive. Now, some people might consider that to be the heavenly kingdom, and others might consider that to be that we are spawned from aliens, from an alien planet, in which the aliens tend to thrive without needing the terrestrial instincts that an earthling might need to have to thrive in the terrestrial environment in which we live. In addition to that, many individuals cling to distractions, like things that will take away the agony of our struggle. Things can include anything from addiction to exercise, to addiction to drugs, to behaviors which may be questionable or even heinous, as a way to tear ourselves away from understanding ourselves and changing for the better. Now, we have stopped adapting to the natural environment for the last 200,000 years since we showed up on the fossil record, and have created a shield against nature instead. This shield has stifled our development, and it has led us to become caged animals who do not participate in the food chain. We take from nature, we do not give back. We are the broken link, and we are the weakest link in nature. We are the most cruel and imbalanced and confused species in nature. We struggle, we have a reliance on technology, which many of which have absolutely no idea how to create at this point in our development. After the division of labor has taken away our interdependence and independence, we have lost our sovereignty from the establishment, imposing the fear upon us that it is better for us to be subservient to one great leader than for many leaders to be at war with one another and create conflict. Now, these were good intentions. They are trying to look out for our best interest so that we could live in harmony instead of in chaos and strife and self-sabotage. Now, this has been good for the collective, but it has been very damaging and hindering for the individual. Now, at this point in our society, where we have less violence than there's ever been in history, there is now more inner turmoil, one could argue, in the individual that there has ever been in history, as our obedience has created an ego which has soared to new heights, blocking our inner peace, self-discovery, self-mastery, and understanding of one another and ourselves. In this time of great awakening, we have come to a time where mankind will begin to find that inner peace and offer each other guidance to the door of self-understanding and self-discovery. After having gained self-discovery and understanding through the toils of various modalities, one can cultivate self-mastery. And ultimately, as a species, as we have gained inner peace in the individual, and harmony amongst the collective. The next step may be to begin to step out of our shield from nature, begin to use technology or walk away from technology. But if we use technology for the better, it may be in such a way that it will strengthen us in our conditioning to become effortlessly thriving in the elements which we now are currently weakened by and hide from, either under closing ourselves in a cage or what began as wearing another animal's hide over our own, which many of us still continue to do as leather. And now we've made cloth out of plant materials and petroleum byproducts to be able to cover our skin and hide ourselves from the damaging elements. Now these elements may be damaging, or they can make us stronger through proper conditioning of gradual exposure. We can be strengthened by the elements. And many individuals such as Wim Hof, who has helped share the amazing modality of inner fire brought to us by Buddhism, from a breathing modality that can help us control our inner body temperature. This is helpful in the cold. Pigmentation, gradual pigmentation, is a way to protect ourselves from being burned by the sun. Now, there are also several other modalities that mankind can use to help our spirit body, one of which is shadow work, in which we battle the ego to tame the inner dragon and come to terms with our suppressed, what are called negative or shamed emotions. Now, emotions may be considered shameful, perhaps because they have not been mediated well. Now, the more we suppress or inhibit these emotions, the less we will be able to mediate them in such a way that will become constructive for one and all. Now, it's told to many people in their upbringing through socialization that if you don't have anything good to say, don't say anything at all. It's through things like this in which negative emotions are shamed. Now, there is a host of false spiritualities that have come up and been created within the last 20 or 30 years that are disempowering to us, that seem easy, and will appease the collective while at the same time harming the individual by actuating emotional shaming and suppression. One of those modalities is called law of attraction. And in this modality, we are to hide what are deemed as negative emotions in replace of faking it till we make it by only showing what are considered positive or socially conducive emotions. Now, by doing this, the negative emotions do not go away. Only through a process that Carl Jung developed and now has gained other modalities and had parallels of the process of shadow work can we hope to achieve the blossoming of inner peace in this global awakening today. Thank you for your time. If you have any questions, please share in the comments below. If you have any critiques, I am very welcome to constructive criticism, negative criticism, any type of insight that you have or argument that you wish to debate. I am more than glad to take into consideration your understanding and keep an open mind. Now, a lot of the information that has been provided today is speculative. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology. I'm working towards my master's, and I'm writing a book on the aquatic ape theory. I've done an intensive amount of research and hope to learn a lot more from conversations with my viewers. Thanks so much, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Take care, and it's been wonderful sharing with you.